This is Deep Dish Conversations, a series in which I, Jerome Moore, sits down with prominent figures in Nashville, Tennessee to talk about social issues over amazing deep dish pizza. Deep Dish Conversations models how to have conversations about deep issues around racism, housing, policing, poverty, and more. Plus, you will get an idea for where to get your next slice of pizza from. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy Deep Dish Conversations. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another amazing episode of Deep Dish Conversations. I'm your host, Jerome Moore. And, every guest that we have on here is amazing, right? But some people are just, extra, especially amazing. And Don Diener is one of those people, former public defender of Nashville-Davidson County, currently the founder and director of Choosing Justice Initiative here in Nashville. Hey, Don, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. What a kind introduction.
Hey, kind for kind people. And this is me and Don's first time meeting in person. Yes. We've been on many Zoom calls over the pandemic times. And so it's good to see you in person, in the flesh.
Get to fabulous.
Hug you. Disclaimer, okay? Disclaimer. I have to put it out here. I told Don that I would do it. Don is a New Jersey native. And when I emailed her and reached out to her about doing the Deep Dish Conversations, she happily agreed, but let me know that because she is from New Jersey, thin crust is definitely unequivocally better than deep dish.
Absolutely.
And so for all her New Jersey folks, East Coast back at home,
yes,
she's doing this for the love of the show and myself. But, we have thin crust here, too, so what she can partake in.
But I would not dare come to Deep Dish Conversations with Jerome Moore and order a thin crust pizza. So,
Well, I had to put the disclaimer out there because, I get it. I understand. Like, pizza is a serious thing, and it's very serious, especially to me. So if you pick a side, you're on the side, hey, I get it.
Well, as deep dish goes, this looks amazing and it smells fabulous.
Go ahead and try a bite. Go ahead and try a bite. Before we get started, let's go and get your first
I feel like it's had a moment to sit here and rest a little bit, and it's ready. And it just looks amazing. So let me give it a go.
How'd it taste?
Really good.
And we have the same thing. Mine is just thin crust.
Wait, and I'm curious, did you order the same thing intentionally, or is that the kind of pizza you really like?
Yeah, this is the pizza I really like. I either I'm a pepperoni person, but I really like this spinach margarita that Gino's has.
Yeah.
It's delicious. So you all should definitely come check it out. If you're here in Nashville
or
in Chicago.
I had good taste to get the same thing. You've been eating here for a while, and you get it. I got the right thing.
Yeah. I need to slow down because if I ate deep dish every twice a week, because when we do this, I'll probably be 300 pounds maybe.
I feel you on that. I got to watch how much pizza I eat too, so it could be an everyday thing for me. I like it that much.
Seriously, it was an everyday thing for me, in actual life. I would eat pizza every day. Quick story, when I was living in China, the second year I was living, I found a Papa John's and ate there almost every day.
Really?
Yeah, and I found it, I was like, why didn't I? It was probably good I didn't find it when I initially got there, but I found the Papa John's, and I literally went maybe every other day, but I already knew what I wanted. I just sat down. I have a real issue with pizza. Really issue.
Well, I hope you ate some of the local cuisine while you were there.
I did. I was there too, on the off days. Every other Cut and Eat in Xiamen, China. Best pizza, one of the best pizzas I've had too. Yeah, in general. Cut and Eat in China. Yeah, it's really good. And it's they do it thin. We can talk about pizza all day. We're here. We're gonna talk about this criminal justice system. We're getting straight into it.
All right.
So, 20 plus years in the public defender's office. What happens in the public defender's office?
What happens? Lots happens in the public defender's office. I think that I often think about it as the emergency room of the criminal legal system, frankly. There is just constant, it never stops. People never stop getting arrested. Right. And the vast majority of people who get arrested can't afford to hire lawyers.
Right.
And so there's just a constant churn of new people being arrested, coming into jails, coming into the office. And the public defender's office job is to try to help those individuals get justice.
Right.
Maybe. I think that my attitude about getting justice has changed over 25 years. And I think so.
So what is that? What is justice to you?
Yeah.
What is that?
What is
even?
justice?
Yeah. What is justice? Because I think that's a chant that we hear a lot, right? Especially when we want justice, and is there one terminology? What does that mean? Something different for every person? Is it an arrest? So. Is it what is it? Is it like a settlement? What is that?
I think that's a really good question that nobody ever really asks, right? You hear the phrase criminal justice system, which is not a phrase I use anymore.
Right.
I refer to the court as the criminal legal system.
Okay.
I have a colleague who refers to it as the criminal punishment system. And I think that's probably the most descriptive thing about it is that.
Do I know this colleague?
No,
okay.
You don't.
Okay.
But, it's not unusual these days to hear people referring to it as the criminal legal or criminal punishment system.
Right.
Because that is really the only kind of justice that happens within the court system.
Right.
For the most part, is punishment, which is one concept of justice.
Right.
But, I went to law school, and I don't recall ever having a conversation in law school for 3 years about what is justice. And so I think it is not a question that many people think about, and certainly not many lawyers think about. For me, justice has come to mean something much more philosophical, and is about how people live in community with each other, in relationship with each other, in a voluntary way.
Right.
And I think voluntary is important, particularly in the context of U.S. culture.
Right.
But how we live together in relationship with each other, the agreements that we make about how we will do that peacefully.
Right.
And most importantly, how we will deal with violations of that agreement.
Right.
Right? Because it's one thing to agree that I'm going to let you be in peace and you're going to let me be in peace. But what happens when that peace gets disturbed?
Right.
What happens when you do something that harms me, that violates the agreement that we had?
Right.
How do we deal with that violation? To me, that's what justice is really about.
Right.
And I think what our court system has long been about is power and control and punishment and oppression.
Right.
And so it's no surprise then that the kind of justice or the what happens in the court system for people who are perceived as violating the code of conduct is purely punishment.
Right. Speaking of power. The word power could, some people can look at it as a bad thing. Some people can look at it as a good thing. But we all have some type of power in some type of way in our daily lives. It's just how it's power. Yes. The word power is dynamic. It's a dynamic word.
Right.
How did you use the power that you had, in the public defender's office to best serve Nashville?
That's a really good question. And I think that, so during the time that I was there, I always had power. Lawyers have power.
Right.
Specific, related to their knowledge of the court system.
Right.
And so when I was a line attorney, I tried my best to use my power as a lawyer to serve and help and get good outcomes for my clients. Once I became the head of the office, that obviously changes.
Right.
And you develop, in some respects, a greater sense of power.
Right.
To make systemic changes.
Right.
So instead of helping one client or serving one client or trying to get one client justice, you have a platform to do that writ large and for a much broader population of people. And so I tried to do that as the public defender, and in all honesty, it took me probably 2 to 3 years to even understand the power that I had, or to start to understand the power that I had and the platform that I had, and to come to learn the difference between managing and leading.
Right.
And so I think when you have power, you have a responsibility to lead.
Right.
And I saw my responsibility as the leader of the public defender's office was to speak truth.
Okay.
First and foremost, which
Right.
is not something that happens in the court system nearly as often as it should.
Right.
And it certainly, I don't think happens, not in our society it doesn't happen much, but it doesn't happen much when we speak truth about what we have perhaps done wrong. To me, I had always struggled with the idea that our clients called us public pretenders.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a new one to me.
Really?
Yeah, I've never had,
Okay.
I've been blessed to never
Well-
have to need a lawyer for anything
Yeah.
like that. And so, but public pretenders,
Yeah, and I think, even in pop culture,
Right.
you know,
public defenders
public-
get a bad,
public-
you get a bad, like that, you get a bad,
I don't know, right? Do they get a bad rap?
Yeah.
So I think that it's complicated.
It's
issue.
complicated, yeah.
So public defenders have the reputation, the stereotype that exists for a reason,
Right.
right? And I think as public defender, I felt I had to own that and deal with that, acknowledge it, and interrogate it, right? So
Right.
why do we have that reputation?
Right.
And the truth is the public defense system in this country was never set up, established to succeed
Right.
the way we might think about what a successful public defender's office looks like in providing equal justice to people who don't have money to hire lawyers.
Right.
So I think that's a systemic issue.
Right.
But I think also it was never set up to exist in community in solidarity with the people who we represent.
Right.
There is this power dynamic that exists. And as long as the system works for public defenders, then they have something to lose
Right.
if we don't speak up.
Right.
Or if we do speak up, we have something to lose. And so I felt like the most important thing I could do as public defender and using my power is to invite that conversation with the individuals who we were representing and still represent to say, what do we need to be doing better? What are we doing wrong? How are we not helping you speak? How are we not speaking for you the way we need to speak for you? How are we not fighting for you?
Right.
And for me, ultimately, the most important issue became reducing our workloads.
Right.
Because
Which you did.
and because I knew that as long as we had too many clients to provide each client with the kind of zealous defense that they needed and deserved, we would never be anything but public pretenders.
Right.
Right. And we would never have the trust and faith of the people, of our clients, of their families, of the
Right.
larger communities from where they live.
Right.
And so fundamentally, I felt like we needed to change that. And so we cut caseloads and started turning clients away, which was a very difficult thing.
Right.
We can talk about this later, but when the public defender doesn't represent you, there's an entirely different system of indigent defense
Oh.
that is, in many respects, worse than the public defender option.
Right.
And so we knew that when we turned clients away, they were going to be funneled into a system that also was not working well.
Right.
And harmed people.
Right.
We started a client advisory board
Right.
to try to get input from individuals who may not necessarily have been represented by our office, but who had lived the experience of going through the court system with a court-appointed lawyer and had things to say about what the problems were.
Right.
And advice to offer for how we could be doing better for our clients. And so I think that the third thing I'll say is that I learned that you are never going to, as long as you sit in rooms and say no to everything,
Right.
in tables where people in other positions of power are, as long as you sit in those rooms and don't say anything or just say no to everything,
Right.
you're not going to get very far.
Right.
And so I learned a lot from watching other elected officials at those tables. And they had ideas.
Right.
And they brought ideas. And they said, this is what I see needs to be done to address some of the systemic issues that are happening.
Right.
And so I think a good example of that that happened ended up going into place right before I left was the Steering Clear driver's license diversion program. That's one of the things I'm most proud of that I did when I was at the public defender's office was to say this whole cycle of sending people through the court system just because they were driving on a suspended license is a waste of time, a waste of resources, not helping anybody, and actually harming a lot of the people who are going through that court system.
Right.
So how can we do it differently? How can we do it better? And how can we address whatever concerns are out there about people driving on suspended licenses in a way that helps, not harms everybody? Right? There was nothing about that system of arrest, go to court, get court costs, not pay the court costs, still don't have a driver's license, get rearrested again.
Right.
There's nothing about that was helping anybody.
Right. So, what... You made me think of a new question.
Okay.
You talk about sitting at the table with these other, powerful people, elected officials. People have this decision-making power, and a lot of times there are not many people that know what these conversations are about or that they're happening. So, what are some things that Nashville should be talking about when it comes to the criminal justice system that we're not talking about? What are some topics that we should be addressing that we're just avoiding here in Nashville when it comes to our criminal justice system or criminal legal system, I would say?
So to me, the most important question that we should all be asking follows up on what I was just talking about related to steering clear. How is this helping anybody?
Right.
How is it making anybody healthier? How is it keeping us safer? How is it delivering accountability?
Right.
And ultimately, is this representative of justice?
Right.
Those are really specific questions that I think anybody looking at our court system needs to be asking, because we spend a lot of money on our court system, and the court system is tied in with policing. Right. It's tied in with jails. Right. It's tied in with probation. Right. And so it is that, as the Nashville People's Budget Coalition really has been central in, I think, trying to start educating Nashvillians about. And NOAA is also an organization that does that. The Black Nashville Assembly, is a new organization that's really working on issues around primarily defunding police, but they're also, their perspective is much broader in terms of defunding law enforcement and the whole system that is related to quote unquote justice. Right.
Public safety.
Public safety. Yeah. Right. And I think that public safety narrative lulls people. Right. Right. I think the average person hears public safety and thinks, oh, the courts and the police got us covered on that. Right. Like, we trust them to keep us safe. Right. And I think that's some of the work that organizations like Gideon's Army and the People's Budget Coalition are really starting to push against, that idea of who keeps us safe and what keeps us safe. Right. And what is safety, right? So the court system gets a lot of money. Right.
So let's talk about the money. Because, I'm just fascinated on the amount of fees, court costs, attorney fees, probationary fees. It's a whole bunch of fees that goes into, once you get arrested and go to jail, that people stay in jail for the simple fact that they can't afford to get out.
Right. Can't afford bail.
It can't afford bail. And me and you could have the same crime, same criminal background, and have drastically different bail amounts. How does that happen? What is going on? What?
Yeah.
Like make it make sense for us now, because it's just
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, I think if you look at historically, it does make sense, right? Bails generally are designed to benefit the wealthy and to oppress those who are not wealthy, right? And so our criminal legal system stems from, historically, you can, if you want to go backwards, right? Jim Crow, go back to convict leasing, right? Go back to slavery, right? So I think the idea of convict leasing, right, is the thing that comes to my mind most prevalently when I think about costs associated with the court system, right? If I set your bail at $50 on a loitering charge, which is really what came to rise in the time of convict leasing in this country, right? Is that it was Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction, and in the South in particular, vagrants, right? This concept of vagrancy, which was largely African Americans, right, who were wandering from looking for work. They might, whatever. Right. Standing on a street corner. Right. Same thing still happens today. Standing on a street corner, you have interaction with police, right? But if I arrest you for vagrancy or public loitering, and I set your bail at $50, and you can't afford to pay that bail, then you are much more likely to go to court and plead guilty to that. Right. Then you will be assessed costs, fines, fees. And if you can't pay them, it used to be under convict leasing, well, then you would be leased out to the landowner who's 20 years ago, land was a plantation. Right. To go work off your debt. Right. And what we see today in the current system is just the carryovers and the legacy in a different form of those same practices. Right. Which is demoralizing. But I think also if we understand where its roots, then it helps us to understand why we need to change it. Right. So today, bail is still about, I think bail is about the fact that the presumption of innocence really doesn't exist in our legal system and in our culture. Right. And so if you're arrested, there isn't a real emphasis on, you're presumed innocent, you should be able to get out of custody pre-trial. Right. It benefits people who have money because they're out. Right. People who don't have money, they're in. Right. And I think when you look at it in the context of the age of mass incarceration, that's when bails really started to become a huge issue and to keep more people in jail pre-trial. If you look at the data. Right. And I think a lot of that was, we're going to figure out a way to process all these people through this court system, right? We're arresting all of these folks. Right. We got to get them through the court system. Right. It's kind of like that conveyor belt. Right. If you don't handle everybody who's coming through, you're going to have a problem. So set the bail. And there is no, I think, you asked about how can one person have one bail, another person have another bail. Right. Well, how is that possible? Well, so there's no guidelines, monetary guidelines that are given, and I'll just speak to Nashville, right? The commissioners and magistrates who are setting bail when people originally get arrested, there's no guidelines. Right. Like it's illegal. It violates the Constitution to have what's called a bail schedule. Right. So that regardless of who you are, what your circumstances are, if you're charged with possession of drugs with intent to sell, your bail is going to be $10,000. Right. That's illegal. Okay. It is not illegal, however, to give some guidelines on, what a maximum bail should be or what a minimum bail should be. Right. To create some uniformity around that. Right. But that is not something that the Nashville policymakers have ever wanted to do. That was a discussion at the table, one of those tables that I was at years ago when we were talking about bail reform. And trying to give guidance.
Right.
And that was in the wake of some reports from Nashville, analysis of Nashville saying, your bails are all over the place.
Right.
Maybe give some guidance.
Right.
And maybe give some guidelines.
Right.
And there was just not a desire on the part of the judges or the district attorney or, and those are the two people who have the most power within the court system to make the policy decisions, not the public defender.
Right.
Much as I might like to think I had a lot of power, but many a room I was in my time as the public defender, making arguments that oftentimes I was the only one in the room. I think so I think in fines and fees, people are starting to wake up on that, right? So the Metro Council just repealed the General Sessions probation fee.
Okay.
So
I think
kudos.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. It was like $35
a month.
Yeah, okay.
So kudos to them.
Right.
I think Howard Gentry, who was our criminal court clerk, he has the ability to, and the discretion to charge some fees or not charge some fees.
Okay.
And he's right on in his attitude towards that his job is, not about collecting money, but about administering the court system in a fair way. And he knows most of the people coming through the court system don't have the money.
Right.
So I think there is change afoot, but in most things related to change, there's the easy things to do, and then there's the harder things to do.
Right.
And I think some of what I feel like I'm doing now in the role I have now is trying to push the harder things to do.
What's going on, everybody? This is your host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations, Jerome Moore, and I know you're enjoying this episode that you're watching currently. Make sure you hit that notification button and hit subscribe so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for all love and support, and continue watching the episode. So, I want to go backwards a little bit on, when you were a public defender, the public defender for Davidson County, Nashville, 10-year run, and then you said, I'm done.
Yep.
Why be done with that role?
Why be done?
Why be done? Yeah, why be done? I tried to find it, like, what happened? I know you're doing your thing now with choosing Justice Initiative, but you seem just like perfect for that role, but maybe it had some limitations. Maybe
I think
maybe
so.
You was enlightened about something. You said, maybe I need to do something else. I'm curious. We're all curious. We want to know.
Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot. So I'm gonna speak out. I'm gonna blame Judge Calloway.
Okay.
Who I know was on Deep Dish. And what happened was she invited me to go to California with her to learn about restorative justice. And while I was out there, that was such a powerful experience for me to learn about a different kind of justice than what I was seeing in the courtroom and what I had been participating in for the last 18 years of my life. And I had this moment while I was out in California, and I started thinking, how much good have I really done for anybody in my career?
Right. Wow.
How have I really helped anybody? How have I made anybody better, right? Those questions that I think people need to be asking themselves about justice. And so that really started me thinking about, is this what I want to do for the rest of my career?
Right.
Or do I want to try something different?
Right.
And so that was kind of the impetus that got me thinking about, maybe I really don't need to be the public defender for the rest of my career.
Right.
I think on top of that, you hit on it a little bit, working in government can be really restrictive.
Right.
And constricting, and there are rules of that bureaucracy that you have to follow.
Right.
One of them that particularly struck me was our inability at the public defender's office to be able to serve people in helping in dealing with their problems beyond whatever their criminal case was.
Right.
And the reality is that people who have been arrested and are involved in the criminal legal system often have overlapping issues.
Right.
And if we really wanted to be about helping people problem solve and get past what's brought them into the criminal legal system. Oftentimes they need help to navigate other legal arenas. And,
other professionals, probably.
Right,
Yeah.
and our hands were tied. We just couldn't do that. And that model, to me, just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so I didn't have a whole lot of faith that I could, within the public defender model, expand what we were doing. And I wasn't really sure, like I said, that I wanted to seat it in a government office.
Right.
And I think that is like the third trip that I was on, or the journey I was on, was really educating myself about things none of us were taught in high school or college, right? Related to government role in oppressions, right? And learning much more about the history of this country. And coming to understand why none of the people that's why I was a public defender, is that I cared about the people who we were representing and who were impacted by the system. And none of them really had any respect for public defenders, or frankly, there's not a whole lot of respect for government.
Right.
And I just got more and more uncomfortable being connected and affiliated and associated with government. Government's done a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Right? Done a lot of bad things.
Like a lot,
And that's not to say, there are good people in government.
It's a system.
But it is
Systems.
systems everywhere are just overwhelmingly powerful. Whether we're talking about the healthcare system or the school system or the legal system.
Right.
They are set up, and the way they are set up, for reasons that are about oppression and racism and capitalism, and for reasons that perpetuate harm on communities and people who are oppressed.
Right.
I just wasn't sure I wanted to be part of that anymore.
And this is my thing. This is me personally. I feel if you do that self-reflection that you had done throughout your career and came to that point, if you really reflect, you come up with a similar like kind of response, like when you talk about the confines of government and working within systems that perpetuate harm. Even though you might be a good individual person trying to want to do good and want to create change, it's difficult to, for one or two or three people, to change systems a lot of times. Are people like yourself and others kind of compromised a little bit when they enter into those positions of government and power in these systems and really want to create change, but at some point if you do the reflection, you have to come to a crossroads. I feel that you either say, hey, am I really helping people,
right?
Or how much help am I really doing, or am I perpetuating kind of the inner workings of this system? Right.
That's exactly right. And I think that the answer for me was I'd done what I thought I could do within that space. And it was time for me to go.
Right.
And try something different.
Right.
I think also in the 10 years that I was there, we had developed leaders within the office.
Right.
And, thinking about working within the system, and myself, I'm not from Nashville. I'm an outsider to this town, right? I'm also a white woman.
Right.
And I look at that as giving me certain privileges.
Right.
And to me, I looked around at the leadership within the public defender's office there were these young lawyers who started there 10 years ago, and they were ready to lead, and they had ideas that were great, and they had energy, and they had, to me, I don't think people who get into elected offices should stay there for a long time.
Right.
I think that there's an energy that you have to commit to that, and there's a lifespan to that.
Right.
And, you know, I looked around, Martisa Johnson, who
Right.
is now our public defender, right?
Right.
Native Nashvilleian,
Right.
African-American woman,
Right.
like just doing this work for all of the right reasons with great ideas and,
Right.
and a great leader. And so I looked around and I'm like, well, like it's not,
Right.
this is not my office.
Right.
And there's not just one way to lead this office.
Right.
And like part of what I can do is step aside and
Right.
let somebody who is a native Nashvilleian, who
Right.
has been personally impacted by the criminal legal system,
Right.
lead
Right.
and support her in that.
Right.
And so,
and that says a lot about who you are as a person too.
well, it just felt like I was.
Because some people could have just said, "Oh, like I can run again, I can win again. I know the job. I'm
Right.
comfortable. I'm content, and you know I can be here for another 10 years." And I think I just think it just really shows your character and your leadership and like the impact and the power that you want to build in the community, to have that self-reflection and know that, hey, there's other leaders that can do this and take it to the next level, and I could use my privilege and who I am and my resources and my knowledge to serve community and build power in another capacity that needs to be filled. So I just think more people should do that. And some people, maybe it costs some people to be in a position for 20 years, but maybe it doesn't.
Right.
And maybe it doesn't. But everybody doesn't make that choice a lot of times self-willingly to take themselves out of a great position, a position that they truly love, but know like, hey, I've run my course, I've done as much as I possibly can do. It's time for this next person to step up.
Yeah, and I think that I knew I wasn't leaving the work.
Right.
I knew that. I started thinking about what would Nashville look like if we had a public defender, and that public defender had other allies.
Right.
So
Right.
what if there was, and at the same time, as we reduced workloads at the public defender's office, I mentioned earlier, we were funneling, all of these people were getting funneled into the private appointed counsel system. That is the other alternative to public defense.
Right.
And nobody is working to push back against the injustices that are happening there.
Right.
And so, I think part of why it took so long for us to take that step at the public defender's office was this concern and fear of, well, if we don't represent folks, they're going to get pushed into the system that's even worse than
Right.
what we feel like we can do.
Right.
And so I had the idea, and that's sort of where the idea for Choosing Justice came from, was, can I start another entity in Nashville that's focusing on similar issues but doesn't have the constraints of government,
Right.
can start to tackle the issues of the private appointed counsel system, and can promote a different approach, that the
Right.
restorative justice approach,
Right.
the somebody from the outside of the system who knows it because I was in it for so long,
Right.
who can push for policy changes and that help people,
Right.
that do things that the current punishment system don't, that
Right.
make common sense, that reduce expenditures within the criminal legal system, that don't harm people
Right.
nearly as much, but actually help people.
Right. So, three last things I want to talk about.
All right.
And just one of them I just remember. It just because
Okay.
we were talking about court fees and court costs, and 2022 is going to be a big year, and so
Yes.
I think it's important for people to let's start with that. I think it's important for people to understand the power that judges have and the role that they play, as we talked about, in bail, court fees, court costs, and being able and having a lot of discretion when it
Yes,
comes to things.
absolutely.
So, could you talk about, I guess, the importance for people to understand the power that judges have and the impact that community could have on who's sitting in those seats to best serve them, especially coming up here in Nashville with the 2022 general sessions? I think all of the judges, all of the 9 seats, I think they all 11 seats are up for the taking for anybody.
Yeah, so there's 11 general sessions judges, there's 6 criminal court judges. There's the DA's race. There's
Yeah.
the public defender race.
Right.
There's
Right.
the criminal court clerk.
Okay.
All of the court system is up for re-election in 2022. So, and you're right. Judges have an enormous amount of power, particularly within their courtrooms. The way that criminal court judges, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but the way that criminal court judges work is in many respects different than the general sessions judges. The general sessions judges are 11 judges, but they are sort of one court.
Right.
Some of the things that they do together, they have to share space.
Right.
They create policies together. So
Okay.
things around who's eligible for pretrial release, which
Right.
is the ability to get out of jail
Right.
without having to pay any money,
Right.
right? Under the supervision of the pretrial release program. So those judges have power to make policies in combination with each other.
Right.
But in their own individual courtrooms, judges, these general sessions judges here in Nashville, they have the power to decide who gets appointed to your case
Right.
if you can't afford to hire a lawyer. They have the power to decide if they're going to appoint you a lawyer
Wow.
or not.
Wow.
They have the power to decide who to
Right.
appoint. So in Nashville, the judge picks your lawyer.
Right. That's important.
It is.
That's important.
It is, and I think particularly important in understanding when you layer that on top of the mistrust and distrust of the legal system that exists in large swaths of the community that are
Right.
subjected to it,
Right.
right? So why would anybody and this was one of the things that really hit me. I read a book called Devil in the Grove many years ago, which is about Thurgood Marshall's time before he was a justice. But he was representing people in the South, in Tennessee and in Florida, representing black men largely, who were caught up in the criminal legal system on bogus charges.
Right.
Right? And that system then, nobody in that system, none of those defendants was going to trust the court to
Right.
give them a good lawyer.
Right.
Right? And so that's the history from which we currently operate today.
Right.
And if you think about, I started thinking about the people I was representing, the conversations they were having with their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents about
Right.
what they understood about how the court system operated.
Right. Yeah.
Why would anybody trust that?
Right.
So I think judges have the power to control what kind of defense you get if you don't have any money. They have the power to waive court costs, fines,
Right.
and fees if they want to,
Right.
or not.
Right.
They have the power to set a monetary bail that you can pay,
Right.
or not.
Right.
They have, if you're in general sessions court, they do probable cause hearings, and can do bench trials where they're going to decide if you're guilty or not guilty if you agree to that.
Well,
They have the power to sentence. Right? They have the power to sentence you.
Right. And so this is awareness for everybody, especially here in Nashville. 2022, do your research, listen to people like Don, but also I think, and we don't have enough time to really talk on it, but Court Watch.
Yeah.
Court Watch, the Nashville Community Bail Fund, has a Court Watch program. And are you all doing the same? Are you all in partnership with the Choosing Justice Initiative with that as well?
So the Choosing Justice Initiative does do some work,
Okay.
basically some educational work around that, trying to help people, just get the foundational knowledge they need to know what are they looking at when they go into a courtroom.
Right. But for people here in Nashville, Court Watch is a great way to evaluate judges and the type of decisions they're making to our residents, to our neighbors, in their cases, so you can really see, kind of, is this the best judge to be sitting in the seat for the community that's going to make the best, equitable decisions, I would say, for everybody,
Right.
no matter, gender, race, all of those things
Right.
that go into the consideration.
And Raheem Buford is doing a Nashville Community Court Watch stuff now, too.
Raheem,
So
shout out to Raheem. He's on season 1. Reach out to Raheem. Yep.
And so folks who are interested in getting to know more about that and getting engaged and going to watch some court can reach out to him as well.
You mentioned another race that's coming up. Well, another seat that's up. The DA.
Yeah.
And so there's Glenn Flunk, right? General Glenn
That
Flunk.
is the current DA, yes.
Attorney General Glenn Flunk. He recently just made, some would say, a controversial decision. when it comes to rest in peace Daniel Hambrick, and his family just still mourning, I'm sure, and as far as the decision when it comes to Andrew Delick, the police officer that murdered him, Daniel Hambrick.
Right.
A lot of controversy around his decision, this backdoor decision on Delick, not going to happen to trial, just being able to plea. What are your thoughts and takes on Glenn Funk's decision, and what would have been, I guess, for us that are not attorneys and lawyers and things like that, what would have been, I guess, a more appropriate, or was there a more appropriate approach that Funk could have taken when it comes to Andrew Delick?
So I think that was a hard day in Nashville for a lot of people, including myself.
Right.
And I think a lot of criminal defense lawyers. We are accustomed to hearing from the district attorney's office that they cannot or will not agree to a certain outcome in a case because the family member of the family or the victim, that's not what they want.
Right.
We routinely hear that. And so to watch something very different play out in the Delkey case was really, really difficult. And confusing and felt very hypocritical.
Okay.
I think layered on top of that is just, the two justice systems.
Right.
Right. There's, and that case outcome, it was emblematic of the two justice systems that exist.
Right.
I can't begin to imagine. I have not talked to Glenn since he made that decision, and I don't want to imagine whatever it was he was thinking when he did that.
Right.
I think that from where I come from in my journey of learning about restorative justice, I firmly believe that there is nothing about our current criminal legal system that serves anybody well.
Right.
There's no justice there for the Hambrick family.
Right.
Right? I don't think there's any justice there for any family.
Right.
Certainly not anybody that has experienced harm.
Right.
The court system is not designed to address harm.
Right.
And in many ways, it exploits people who have experienced harm to perpetuate the system as it is.
Right.
Victims of crime are often cited as the reasons that policymakers do the things that they do. But victims of crime are oftentimes a very defined, like the victims they are talking about is one type of victim. It's one set of victims.
Right.
And it is not the Hambrick family.
Right.
And so I think that it is time for reimagining and complete, frankly, revolution within the court system to undo it.
Right.
It's not doing anybody any good.
Right.
I don't want to see what I want to see is all of my clients get that plea offer.
Right.
Right. And so I struggle with knowing what I know about the criminal legal system. I'm not in a position to be able to say I wanted to see Andrew Delkey do a whole lot of time in prison.
Right.
I don't think prison helps anybody.
Right.
Not the current form of it.
Right.
So I'm on the other side of things.
Right.
I want to see all of my clients get restorative, non-punitive sanctions when they harm people.
Right.
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 I want to see all of my clients get the benefits that Andrew Delkey got.
Right.
So rather than wanting to push for for things to be harsher on him necessarily. Where I'm coming at this from right now is that everybody who is subjected to this system ought to be treated in the same way he was.
I agree.
So maybe we'll see that happen.
Maybe. Maybe. I want to end on the note of speaking a little bit about the Choosing Justice Initiative. How can people find out more about that and reach out to you if you need, representation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just how can people reach out to you, find out more about Choosing Justice Initiative, and
Yeah, so you can go to our website, cjinashville.org. And when I started CJI, the goal was to create a community-based, client-centered, holistic, for lack of a better word, but holistic law firm that represents people who can't afford to hire lawyers.
Right.
Because they ask us to represent them.
Right.
They, in other words, hire us.
Right.
Even though they're not going to pay us.
Right.
Right. It is fundamentally that issue that I go back to of, we only have as much value as the people see in us.
Right.
Right. And so I believe that if we provided high quality representation to people who can't afford lawyers,
Right.
that people would seek us out.
Right.
And they would find value in it, and our reach would grow.
Right.
And that is happening.
That's
right?
great.
So we've been in existence almost 3 years now.
Okay. Is it a nonprofit?
It is a nonprofit.
So people can donate.
People can donate.
Donate.
Indeed.
Need
People
money.
can donate.
Need people. This is the way it's
Yep.
out. You need money. You need
Yep.
resources to help people.
Yep. So started with just me, and we just had our 4th staff member start this week.
Wow! Congratulations to them.
Yeah, so that's exciting. We now there are 3 lawyers on staff and a paralegal, who also, she's
Right.
more than a paralegal, right?
You all take interns?
We do. We just finished. We have our Vanderbilt undergraduate student with us.
Yeah.
We are located on the campus of American Baptist College.
Okay, ABC. Okay.
And so you can find us there. If you have any connections with ABC, they can point you in our direction. But when I started it, I spent a long time thinking about the name, as most people do. And I firmly believe that fundamentally people want to act in justice, right? They want to be just.
Right.
If they see 2 options on the table and they think about it and they think that's wrong.
Right.
This is the right thing to do.
Right.
And simply put, what's wrong and what's right, and people want to do what's right.
Right.
So many people don't know what's happening though.
Exactly.
Right? And it's not their experience to be involved in the court system.
Right.
Once you open their eyes to it, whether it's through Court Watch or listening to podcasts like yours
Right.
or reading things, right, you come to recognize there's so much injustice happening.
Right.
What I wanted to do at CJI, and when I chose the name, is that I believe when people know what's happening and they know when they have a choice between justice and injustice, they will choose justice.
Justice. Right.
But I also think the power of choice is real.
Right.
Going back to and rooted in the fact that people don't currently have a choice of who their lawyer is if they need a court-appointed lawyer.
Right.
The power of choice means something. It's
Right.
power.
Right.
And I believe that every person should have those choices within our court system.
Right.
That is perhaps the most significant wealth-based disparity that exists in our court system. If you got money, you can hire the best lawyer out there.
Right.
Right? And if you don't have money to hire a lawyer, you will be stuck with
Right.
whoever the court system gives you,
Right.
with all of the flaws in that system.
Right.
We don't have time to get into, but you will be stuck with that lawyer.
Right.
And the kind of justice or outcome you get will be only as good as what that system gives you. And that's not right. So you have a choice. We're a good choice.
And choose the Choose Justice Initiative.
Yeah, so choose the Choosing Justice Initiative if you need a lawyer.
Right.
And also if you're just interested in systemic reform, right? So we are trying to encourage people and educate them about what restorative justice is. And is that an option you might want to pursue in your case? Is that an option the person who you may have harmed might want to pursue?
Right.
How can we get people out of that punishment system and get them into places that are really going to benefit them, heal them, find accountability, but also balance that with what feels like justice?
Well, look, that's time. Don, I appreciate you. I learned a lot, and I've learned a lot from Don just in general, but I've learned even more here. But I hope people watching really, really listened and really just did a lot of reflection. And especially if you are in the criminal legal system,
there you go.
Hopefully you do the same reflection Don has done and really ask yourself, kind of what good am I doing? Or am I continuing to perpetuate the harm of people through the system that I am working for? And so, Don, I really appreciate you as a person and as a guest and the work you're just doing here in the Nashville community and the role model I think that many other people that's in your profession should be. And I hope they're taking notes because this definitely needs to be a lot of reform, tear down, and just rebuild a whole new just court system, just legal system in general. And so I really appreciate you and your character and just who you are as a person. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just feel honored to have been invited, and I've enjoyed talking with you. So
and thank you for eating deep dish.
Oh, it was really good. It was really good. I didn't eat much, but that's because there was so much.
She's taking it to go.
Absolutely. This will be lunch for the next 5 days.
A slice a day. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deep Dish Conversations. Make sure y'all hit the subscribe button and the notification, all that good stuff. And we'll see y'all next time. Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
This was amazing. Oh, that was Joshua. Was that good?